Space, the final frontier. Join us for a bold conversation. Our prime directive: to recap our favorite Star Trek shows, both new and old. To engage in debate about all things Trek. Prepare to energize with phasers set to stun.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Phasers Set to Stun, where we continue to show our love for everything Star Trek in this ongoing series from Film by Podcast, which focuses on every quadrant of the expanding universe of Trek, covering television, animation, movies, directors, merchandise, and so much more. Plotting the course, as always, is your core Trek crew. I'm David Burns.
I'm Scott Hoffman.
And I'm Wayne Whited.
Well, gentlemen, we here at Phasers Set to Stun are joining in on the celebration of the 60th anniversary of Star Trek by diving into the original series that started it all. We're going to work our way through all 3 seasons, breaking down the episodes and discussing them like we love to do. Well, today we are starting with the original, at the time unaired, pilot, The Cage, written by Gene Roddenberry and directed by Robert Butler. One might notice in this episode that we have a different captain. We know who that is, of course, Captain Pike. And with the exception of Mr. Spock and actress Majel Barrett, who would be recast as Nurse Chapel, a completely different crew. But before we get any further, Wayne, why don't you tell our listeners what this episode is about?
Captain Christopher Pike leads the Enterprise on a rescue mission to Talos 4, where he encounters the survivors of a long-lost expedition and meets Vina, a young woman with them. He soon discovers the survivors are illusions created by the telepathic Talosians, who capture him and imprison him underground. The Talosians attempt to manipulate Pike through elaborate fantasies, hoping to force him and Vina to repopulate their dying civilization. With the help of his crew, Pike resists their control by exploiting emotions the Talosians cannot fully understand, proving humans are too independent to enslave. Pike learns Vina's beauty is an illusion masking her severe injuries, and the Talosians allow her to remain behind with her own fantasy while the Enterprise departs.
So, NBC reportedly called this pilot too intellectual, too slow, and not enough action, which is why they sent this back. Luckily, they sent it back to say, no, how about you give us another one? And we pretty much get what we got today, with the crew that we know today, I should say. But what do you guys think about that? I mean, what we know today, what we know of Star Trek, all the episodes we have seen over the years, I mean, that episode, The Cage, fits the mold perfectly, does it not?
Oh, yeah. And, I while I agree with NBC's decision for a pilot, as a pilot, this is rather cerebral. It's probably not what they're looking for, but I love this episode.
I do too.
I actually consider this one of the top 10 of the original series. I always have ever since I first saw it. So, but as a pilot, I can see where they're coming from. I really can. There's not really that much action happening in this. It is all cerebral. It's a very in-depth story, to tell you the truth, but it's very well written, very well directed. The acting, in my opinion, is fantastic. It is very different, though. There's a lot of different stuff. Star Trek has not established itself yet with this episode.
No, Scott, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to, like, you almost have to put yourself in their shoes at the time, because for us, especially for the 3 of us, we've grown up with this stuff,
Yeah,
right? So, I mean, we're used to it. I would say the only thing that seemed maybe too cerebral was trying to get your head around what was real and what was an illusion, or the Talosians' entire plot and what they were trying to do. But once you kind of get the hang of it, it didn't seem all that, like, it's not one of the courtroom episodes. Right. Or something that takes a lot of kind of, understanding different species or whatever. You've basically just got the Talosians. So it kind of surprised me when I heard that, especially considering Forbidden Planet was, what, 57?
Yeah.
and it doesn't seem like it's much more cerebral than that. So I don't know. I've been thinking about that. Like, how would it have been different if they would have continued with this version of Star Trek? If they hadn't, switched over to what was probably a little bit more action based than what we had in this.
That's the question I was going to pose. Imagine if you were the embassy executive greenlit this pilot. What would we have gotten different? I mean, would we have gotten Kirk eventually? Would we have got any? No, we wouldn't have, because we would have gone on with Pike. Kirk would have never existed.
Right.
But would it have continued? I mean, would it have been made its 3 seasons? I mean, we really don't know. It's all guesswork. But you got to really think. Scott, you brought up a good point right there. You got to think about the state of television at the time. There really wasn't that much science fiction on television. I mean, we had films, but films were pretty much B-movie sci-fi at the time. We haven't got into the mainstream science fiction yet. This is this episode was filmed pre Lost in Space, pre Irwin Allen, pre all that that sci-fi. Voyage of the Bottom of the Sea was just beginning to air when this was being filmed. So there really wasn't much sci-fi other than the Twilight Zone at that time. So I can see why Roddenberry marketed this to NBC as what do you call it, the wagon train to the stars.
Yeah.
Because westerns were like really big, but westerns were action. That's what people watch them for. So I don't know, but I would love to have seen this as a series. And when you think, it makes the mind wonder, really.
it does. Maybe we'll put it in that Blockbuster video, Scott, that we always talk about, that a different universe.
It'll be just a single episode on a VHS tape next to Friday the X-Men's pilot episode. But yeah, it also makes me think about like the personality dynamics in this. The 3 big ones that come to mind are really just the ones that I'm most kind of drawn to, which would be Pike, Number 1, and Spock.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting to read that Leonard Nimoy was inclined to play Spock as a little bit more energetic, because Pike was being acted as so stoic. But it almost felt like Number 1 was kind of leaning into the McCoy kind of aspect, like the kind of dynamic where McCoy usually fits, where he kind of turns a side eye and he's like, I don't know about all this.
I find it interesting, though, that Dr. Boyce, he has a lot of McCoy in him, though.
Yeah,
he does.
You really could see that. The scene where he goes to Pike's quarters, and he brings his medical bag, and Pike's basically, I don't need medical attention. What are you doing? But he was making drinks, is what he was doing. He was making a martini. So, I mean, that really was McCoy right there, if you think about it.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Right. Showing up with his hooch bag. Yeah.
So you already see
I always
that.
find it I just want to say, because that scene too stands out for me, because I find it really interesting how Pike's situation and how he describes, it feels like we're walking into the middle, for a pilot, we're walking into the middle of a story. We've got some sort of an adventure that happened before this, and Pike is like wanting to throw it all out and resign. I find that really interesting that they chose to start it in between storylines. I just wanted to bring that up. I
think he was wanting to go somewhere kind of like George Lucas did with Star Wars. He started right in the middle of the action, and you want to know what's going on. So I felt like Gene Roddenberry did that on purpose, because he was going to leave that open so that he could explore that more in the series. At least that's what Roddenberry was doing. I find it funny, because when I was watching this episode again, when they made it down to the planet and I saw Spock was limping, I was like, what the hell is Spock limping? Yeah. And then I realized it's because of the wounds and stuff they received from the battle that they had, that they talk about. That's why he was limping.
I never realized that either until I did the research for this
time. Same here.
Many times as I've seen that, I never realized it.
No, because I was like, why the hell is Leonard Nimoy limping? I was like, is this a mistake? What's going on? But then when I dug into it, I'm like, oh, okay. That makes sense now. Okay. I do find it interesting, and we'll talk a little bit more about the episode here, but I do find it interesting, though, that Gene Roddenberry took this footage to give us the Menagerie Part 1 and 2 later on in the original Star Trek. So at least the footage didn't just get lost. I I mean, the pilot
Yeah.
itself didn't come out in its entirety till what, 86, I think?
86. That's around the time I saw it. The
Yeah.
first time when it came out on VHS.
Yeah, that's
That's
the
a
first
long
time,
time.
it is. First time you got to
Jeez.
see it as it was meant to be seen. But because you only saw it as the menagerie is the only way you saw it. And if you didn't know the history of the unaired pilot, you had no clue. You thought that was just filmed for that episode, right? So
It makes you wonder what, the people who watched the menagerie, what were they thinking back then? I would love to talk to someone that had watched the original series, because I don't know anybody that actually watched it when it airing. I love to know what they were thinking. Like, did they realize that this was the pilot, or did they just think these were like special scenes that,
Right.
were filmed for that episode?
which also makes me interesting to find, not to get on a tangent here, but I'm anxious to find out how they're going to end Strange New Worlds with. Are they going to do this very similar thing? Are we going to see this?
Well, I'm under the impression that Strange New Worlds happened after this story.
After this story. Okay,
Yeah.
I think you're right. It is. Yeah.
But we do have to see what happens to Pike. We all know what happens
We do-
to him.
we
We haven't
do.
seen that yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting. So what do you guys think about the opening? The very similar opening of Star Trek We Know, just without the narration.
I like it.
I did too. It felt awkward because I kept waiting for the narration. I was like, when's it coming? But then it doesn't. I liked it though.
I do too. I mean, that theme is iconic anyways. I love hearing that theme.
Oh yeah.
It
Absolutely.
felt it made it feel more unique among all the other episodes.
Yeah.
Obviously, because it's missing that that element.
Yeah.
But it also makes it almost feel a little bit more cinematic.
It does. You're right, and I think that's probably what he was going for. I found it very awkward. I like that we started in the middle. Wayne, you mentioned that, and I thought that was kind of neat because they were on their way to like go rescue somebody, I think, or go to a planet, I think it was. And they was going to get sidetracked because Spock had found like a crashed ship, but there was no survivors at first, and they did find the survivors. Well, we know they really weren't there, but So, but one of the things I felt very weird was time warp factor 7. That just does not flow, man.
Well, like I said, things weren't established at that point yet. We got lasers and all this other stuff that's going on, and
We had got the engage, so I like that, but that just felt really weird.
Well, they couldn't keep doing it because they'd have to take a step to the left and then a jump to the right.
Jump to the right.
Well, one thing I'm glad that they didn't ever continue was their version of the warp drive. That makes me laugh every time I see it. The flashing in and out with
Yes.
this.
Yuck.
That,
Yuck.
Yeah.
I'm glad they didn't continue with that.
Yeah.
That was
It almost
terrible.
looked like they were kind of like the Starfield for some reason felt like they were kind of running from left to right through this like sound stage of just like lights on a poles
Yeah.
or something like that. It was very hard to like I could see these little like clusters of stars. It was kind of weird.
Yeah. I think one of the lines that really made me cringe, I'm like when Pike says he can't get used to a woman on the bridge. No,
Yeah.
no offense, Lieutenant. You are different, and she's got that facial expression like what?
Right.
No, it's just ouch. Wow. I mean, I know the time period. Obviously,
Yeah.
we know the growth this series had. This series has done a lot for different ethics and races and stuff like that. So we got to give it to them.
Right.
But just to see that was kind of awkward.
Well, especially given that this is, jumping in the middle of a story. So it's not
Yeah.
like number one has been there for like a day.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she's got a reason to give him the side eye on that.
Yeah, I agree. And then how about the use of paper in the future? That's another thing I found very awkward in this episode.
Yeah, they're
Did
like
it not,
fax
you guys?
machines.
Yeah.
That is weird. Yeah. I'm glad they got away from that too. Gosh.
I wonder if it was a sponsor ad. Like they had to be like, brought to you by Mead or Dunder Mifflin or whatever.
I don't know. It could be.
I wonder if they have people, someone specifically has to go around and change the rules of paper on their printers. If that's their specific job.
Well, I guess they would have to. It doesn't magically appear there, right?
Well, yeah, they didn't. We never saw a like a replicator or anything. So yeah, someone had to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so missed opportunity for a Lower Decks episode of Lower Decks on the original series.
Yes.
Specifically in this one.
Yeah.
right?
That would have been good.
Absolutely.
Somebody's got to launder all their sweater uniforms and, give Spock a bad haircut, things like that.
Yeah.
I did like the coats they wore.
I did too. That was it. I mean, we saw that. We didn't see that until the movies came around. Those
Right.
like away team jackets. I think they should do that more with the series. I like
agree.
that.
Well, I think Strange New Worlds started doing it last season. They
Yes,
did, remember?
they did. They did, which I
Yeah.
mean, that makes sense.
And we mentioned it there too, how cool those jackets were. So
Yeah, we did. I remember you wanted one of those.
yes, I still do. But I just for the time period, I thought those jackets were pretty cool. I really do.
They are.
Yeah.
You know, so but no, a lot of cool things in this episode. I really like Jeffrey Hunter as Captain Pike. I do. I would like to have seen his character explored more, and I'm glad we're getting that with Strange New Worlds, obviously, with Ansett Mount playing Pike. But I would have gotten more of Jeffrey Hunter. I just found him very intriguing, and he's a good actor. He really is. And the things he pulls off in this episode, I thought, really made me care for his character.
I agree with that. It would have been nice, but I also, and this has always been in the back of my mind ever since I learned that he died very young. I think he died like in, what was it, 68 or 69. So,
Did he really? I didn't know
yeah,
that.
Yeah.
Wow,
So you really have to think about, how you think about Star Trek now, and then if he had been the starring role, what would have happened?
Maybe would have got Kirk at that point. We don't know.
Maybe.
We will never know, unfortunately.
No.
One of the things I found very interesting, Wayne and Scott, you'll both get a kick out of this, is I'd forgotten about. I mean, I knew a lot about this episode, but I'd forgotten that when he was put in the cage, the cell, it was kind of like a zoo. I quickly had flashes of the Orville. Please tell me you did too.
Oh, I forgot about that. That one episode. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm still catching up.
Okay, we won't say
Yes.
anything, but it really did.
They had to have taken inspiration from the cage. I mean,
Without question.
I never made that connection between the two. Yeah.
I didn't either until I watched this. Like, holy crap. Seth MacFarlane had to be influenced by this. So, he was a huge Star Trek fan.
yeah.
And he still is. So obviously he pulled from this. Had to have.
Yeah. He
Well,
definitely
I've got something to
had
look forward to then.
You do. Yeah.
That was a good
And you'll
episode.
recognize it right away, Scott. Now that we've kind of spoiled a little bit of that for you. But sorry about that. So
That's good.
But the whole thing down there on the planet and stuff like that, I thought that was cool. I liked the twist at the end too, of where she was an illusion too, to a degree. I mean, she was still a living, breathing human being, and I like the explanation of the fact that they had never seen a human before, so they didn't know how to put her back together. They saved her life, but they didn't know what a human looked like. I thought that was a cool twist at the end. I really do.
It was almost a Twilight Zone type
Yes.
style twist,
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I also want to say for 1964-65 television, the Talosians and the makeup and the way they were put together is really, really well done.
Yep.
I mean, that they stand up on modern television, really.
Yeah.
The idea of putting, small women as the bodies, but having the voice of the man, and then having the large heads that pulsate.
That was
very,
cool.
very well done makeup, and actually, that's got to be very different from anything anyone else ever saw on television at the time.
Yep. It definitely had vibes of the 50s sci-fi. I know this is in the 60s, but
yeah.
it definitely had the vibes of that, and that's what I really liked about it and appreciated it. But yeah, that pulsating in their heads was so cool. Like you couldn't take your eyes off of it. You really couldn't.
Yeah, it was very distracting. Yeah. Well, and when they kind of revealed Vena's kind of true state, I mean, I guess surgically they had to put her together, not with any kind of like technology. But I did kind of feel like, since you've transported two other women to the surface, you have kind of an idea of what humans, specifically women, look like. Maybe you could take another crack at fixing Vena.
Right?
Just to help her out. Like, I imagine she's, I don't know, I guess they're managing any kind of like discomfort or whatever with illusions, but man, and just kind of a poor idea to say like, yeah, I'm sure she could reproduce with no problem being back together the way that she was.
Yeah.
That's a shot in the dark.
I laugh because I'm looking through the glasses of today technology. So when they said that they were going to give her, basically what she wants, so she got her illusion back. They made herself look young again, but they gave her Pike, a clone of him, basically. And I was thinking, looking through his glasses, wait a minute, did he give permission for that AI right there? Did Pike give permission?
Right.
So silly, I know, but I literally did think of that about that. So,
my thought about the ending of it, I always find the ending rather tragic, to tell you the truth. I know it's supposed to be a happy ending, but it's not. To me, that's not a really happy ending. I feel kind of sorry for Vina. I mean, they did their best putting her together, but she's still trapped on this world. She'll know. I mean, she'll know that's not the real Pike. It's an illusion. She's living an illusion. I wouldn't be happy in that situation. I don't think she would have been either. So, in my way, it's a tragic ending.
Yeah, I mean, it's got very much of a Truman Show shelf life to it, right?
Yeah.
After a while, like, if the idea is they're supposed to procreate the species and live together and raise kids, the Telosians have no idea. They're going to run out of notes in like 2 days, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like being in the holodeck. I mean, it would be great for a long time, but after a while, you'd want to get back to the real world. You get tired of the illusion, the made up world. That's the way I feel about it.
Yeah. I think you're right. What do you guys think about the dancing Orion scene?
That's iconic.
It is very, very iconic. Absolutely.
At the end of every episode of Star Trek.
It sure is. It's interesting how Pike gets angry in that scene and gets up and walks out, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's very cringy. Like, I don't know who the one guy is supposed to be, but there's that one guy that's always leering, and he's like, "Yeah,
oh yeah,
look at her, yeah."
Very creepy.
Like, ooh, you're making this so much worse.
Yeah.
But interesting that the Telosians would even go there to say like, "Oh, you want super sexy hulked out Vina? Okay, well here you go." And he's like, "No," and especially with that guy, no.
Yeah.
Another character that I would love to have seen more of, and luckily we're getting it with Strange New Worlds, but it's Majel Barrett's number one.
Yes.
I loved her in that role, even though we just this little bit we get. I know we get her as Nurse Chapel in a role in the original series, but to see her in this role as number one, I don't know. She stood out so good as a second in charge of the Enterprise, and
it's the potential. That's what you're seeing. It's the potential of that character. We see that there's so much to it, and we're kind of sad that we don't get to see any more than just this hour that we got of her.
Because I mean, she was fantastic in that role. I'm sure you guys agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. And I mean, it's one of my favorite parts about Strange New Worlds is that we got kind of the revival of that. But yeah, Majel does an amazing job in that role, and that's one thing that I would have liked to have seen of subsequent episodes. It seems like there, if stars could have aligned in a different way, maybe there could have been some kind of, offshoot where, Pike and possibly number one and maybe some of the other crew members are on a different starship than the Enterprise for whatever reason, and they could have occasionally interacted with the Enterprise itself, or maybe even had just kind of, spin-off episodes. But
yeah.
And I'm sure all the people listening to the show obviously know Majel Barrett would go on to be Loxana Troy, and also in Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and then obviously she is the voice of the Enterprise in the Next Generation. So I mean, she's been on Star Trek for a very, very long time, and obviously the wife of Gene Roddenberry. Were they dating at this time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. They met on a series that he did before this called Lieutenant.
Okay.
And he was very adamant about her casting because I believe NBC did not want her. They liked the character. They liked the idea of a woman being on the bridge. They didn't like her. But he was very adamant about having her on there.
And I'm glad he won out on that because she was fantastic. Overall, I think this episode was a really good episode. And again, I guess NBC is right. Thankfully, they were, because we got the Star Trek that we do get. And who knows what would have come of it. So many things, so many variables, I guess. But looking back, like I said, I mean, this really truly fits the mold of a Star Trek episode. It really does. From beginning to end. No questions about it. Any interesting things you guys want to talk about the episode?
I'd like to mention. I mean, it's a big what if, but I'm very happy that they did incorporate this episode into the continuity, because it really it expands the whole Enterprise life. We got all these stories that we can imagine and tell from before Kirk became. We got Strange New Worlds out of it, which I'm very thankful for, because we all love that series. But I'm just it's a big what if. It just makes the mind flow when you think of the ideas that can come from this. And I'm surprised there hasn't been more to this. There's a few comics, but there's really never been very many novels told about this in this timeline. So they need to get working on that.
They do. That'd make a good comic book, Wayne.
I think so too.
It really would. Interesting. Well, let's move on, guys. So one of the things that we love to do in the series the current series that we do, we like to talk about which characters shine the most and who we would like to be in the episode. So I wanted to carry that on to this series. We know this is the OG series, and we like to treat it like it's new, right? We want to talk about the episodes, explore them, and those kind of things. So which character do you think shined the most in this episode? Wayne, I'll let you go first.
Well, for me, and we've mentioned this a couple of times, it's number one in this episode. I mean, she's really, in my opinion, the breakthrough character here. Not just the fact that, a woman in charge, which is unusual for 1960s television, but that she's a highly intelligent, composed, very decisive in everything she does. She's an important part of Pike's command staff. And, it's a role that would be taken over by Spock when Kirk takes charge. But really, here, she's setting the tone of the female role in all of Star Trek that comes after this. And really, when you think about that, that makes her one of the most important figures in the Star Trek canon. Like I said before, of all the characters, I wish Roddenberry carried her over into this series. I'm not saying replace Spock, but I wish she could have carried that character over into the regular series, because we got Strange New Worlds, thank God for that. So I'm kind of getting my wish of seeing more number one, and I love what they're doing. But I think she stood out the most for me.
Great. Scott, what about you?
Yeah, I totally agree with 100% of everything that Wayne said. It's number one for me without a doubt. I think, considering what I mentioned before about the kind of dynamic between Pike and Spock needing to feed a little bit more of that energy, I feel like, knowing what kind of performances we got from Majel in subsequent roles, it would have been so fascinating to see that personality come out. Like, imagine kind of the nature of Luoxana Troy in the idea of kind of like, taking people down a few pegs and taking command of a lot of situations. I feel like it would have been fun to see those, more of number one come out and see Majel explore more of the comedic side, in addition to the commanding side that she has, especially if they followed suit and sent Pike to the surface on a regular basis. Having number one be in control of the Enterprise while he's away, I think it would be amazing to see.
Yep.
Dave, what about you?
Well, I'm with both of you guys. It's no doubt it's number one in this, because, I mean, she truly does take charge. And at the time period that this was created, you don't see that kind of strength in a woman character. And, I mean, I believe there was even one point that Spock just wanted to leave, remember? He wanted to take off, and then she was like, no. We're going to do what we need to do to basically save Pike. And she's the one that commands the big laser to go down to the planet to try to blow open the door to get to him. So I mean, a lot of it is because of her, and she completely takes charge of that ship, and everybody listens to her. They don't skip a beat, and just the strength of Majel Barrett. I mean, she brings so much to that character, and it comes off on screen beautifully. And not to beat a dead horse, but thank goodness we have Strange New Worlds to explore the character of number one Una, because seeing this again, I would desperately want more of her character.
Yeah.
So no doubt about that. But good. I'm glad we all agreed on that one. I had a feeling we would, because she just stood out in this episode, without question. So if you could be any character in this episode, who would it have been and why? Scott, I'll let you go first.
Same answer. Number one. Just considering how involved she was with the rest of the mission, right? On the Enterprise, on the surface with the portable phaser, for some reason, big cannon on the surface, right? She just had so much more to do and so much more to explore. It feels like it would have been fun.
Yeah.
Wayne, what about you?
Well, you know me, I like to take the character that has the least amount to do and is in the least amount of danger. So I chose Lieutenant Jose Tyler.
What?
I mean, he's
Wow.
the navigator. He gets to navigate the Enterprise, and he's on the landing party, so he's having the fun without having to have all the emotional turmoil and the injuries and stuff. You know, he's not affected by anything that really happens in this episode. Plus, I did a little bit of research on this podcast because I wanted to know what happened to that character. You know, why isn't he in Strange New Worlds? So I have found out that he left the ship right after, just before that series started, and went on and command his own ship. So yeah, I'll take him.
Oh, wow. Look at you digging real deep on that character.
Deep cuts.
Yeah, no kidding. Damn.
David, what about you?
For me, I'm going to go with the David smartass remark and say Captain Pike, just for the mere fact that he gets trapped with 3 very attractive women, I might add. Granted, he's got to go through a little bit of pain and agony and some suffering a little bit, but who doesn't for a beautiful woman, right? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so I'm going with Captain Pike on that one.
Good choice.
Thank you. Well, obviously, you know, we like to discuss in our episodes about Easter eggs, but guys, we really can't do that since this is the original Star Trek. So nothing came before this. But what we can do is talk about some of our favorite facts from this episode. And Wayne, as you mentioned, off the podcast, what created some Easter eggs that we get to see in the future. You know, so we'll be talking about some of that stuff. So a lot of really cool. I mean, we could sit here and talk probably a couple hours about this episode, about behind the scenes and, you know, those kind of things of how it got created, why it got created, and, you know, those kind of things. But one of the things I found very interesting about this fact, and anybody who knows the original Star Trek, is unlike any of the other episodes, this pilot has 0 body count. 0. Nobody dies.
No, you're right.
Interesting.
You're very right. I didn't know. I never noticed that.
I know.
That is different.
Yes, of course we didn't have the red shirt as we get later on in the original Star Trek, but apparently no cannon fodder this time. Where Gene Roddenberry said, you know what, we need some cannon fodder in the later few episodes. So what did you guys find out? Any interesting things?
Scott, I'll let you go first if you found anything interesting.
I appreciate that. The most interesting thing, you know, speaking of Majel Barrett, kind of going above and beyond. Apparently, for the testing of the green skin for the Orion Vina, they went to Majel Barrett as a test subject. In her words, she was cheap, she was there, and our guest star wasn't. But apparently, she had to go over and over again to get this application because they weren't able to see the right shade of green on the screen. So I guess it kind of reminds me of Incredible Hulk, you know, early days trying to go from gray to green.
Yeah.
But apparently, it turns out the makeup artist discovered that the film processing lab was decolorizing her because they didn't know she was supposed to be green. Now,
Oh, wow.
that speaks to how much of a trooper Majel is for going through such an exhaustive process over and over again to just be like, you just had the wrong filter on? Really?
That is either she loves that role, she loves being in front of the camera, or she has a deep love of Gene Roddenberry.
Yeah.
I mean, one or the other.
Yeah, one or the other.
Wayne, what about you?
All right. Well, let me start because I actually found out a lot of stuff that I didn't know, which really surprised me when I was doing the research this. But I learned that The Cage wasn't the only script that Roddenberry submitted to NBC as a possible pilot. There were 2 others. The first one was titled The Perfect World and would later be rewritten to become the episode The Return of the Archons. And the second one was titled The Women, which would be rewritten to become Mud's Women. I think NBC chose wisely, but it'd be interesting to think of those 2 episodes and how they would have been with Pike and his crew in them. Also, in his original pitch for the Cage, it wasn't Captain Christopher Pike in command of the Enterprise. It was Captain Robert April. Now, we are familiar with this character now because he appeared in the original, the animated series, but he's been a major character in Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Also, when the script will always be credited to Gene Roddenberry, there were really two other people that had a big influence in its writing. The first one was a man named Harvey Lynn, who was a physicist who was acting as a technical advisor. He suggested a lot of what would later become like Star Trek lore, part of the continuity, the things we know, like phasers and warp drive and stuff like that. And also Desilu executive Herb Solow, who offered Roddenberry a lot of suggestions and changes in order to keep this pilot within budget. So they definitely get credit for the creation of Star Trek. They should. And another man I want to bring up is the director of the episode, Robert Butler. He was a very well-known, successful TV director. He directed episodes of like the Dick Van Dyke Show, Twilight Zone, Batman. He even directed episodes of Lois and Clark, The Adventures of Superman. But I know him big because he directed the pilot episode of Hill Street Blues, which is something that's always stuck in my memory. And he won an Emmy Award for that, too. There's another person I want to mention, too. The man who provided the voice of the lead Talosian was Malachi Throne. He was a frequent guest star to many TV series, Lost in Space, Time Tunnel, Batman. He was even on Babylon 5. But he would return to Star Trek in 1991 to play the Romulan Senator Pardek in the Next Generation episode Unification Part 2. He also did voices for like Batman and Beyond and Animaniacs. And he was the narrator on the original trailer for Star Wars. Now, the reason for Spock's out-of-character smile on Talos 4 was finally explained, actually, in the Star Trek Short Treks episode Q&A released in 2019. In fact, there's a lot in this episode, as we mentioned, that goes against Star Trek continuity. It's just watch it and enjoy it and kind of ignore all that. Okay, that's the best way to do this. Now, I saw in Pike's quarters on the shelf, you can see another piece of the uniform that we really never was used, and that was the captain's hat. We never see it again. We never see anyone wear it, at least not until we saw captain's hat in Captain Freeman's ready room on Star Trek Lower Decks. So there's a little connection there. Yeah. Now, this was the single most expensive episode ever created for the original Star Trek series. This cost NBC and Desilu a total of $616,000, and I have no idea how much that would be in today's money, but that's a lot for that time. And then finally, I want to end with The Cage, as we mentioned, was first seen in its entirety in 1986 with its VHS release. This was presented in half color and half black and white because the original negatives had been actually physically cut when they created the episodes for the menagerie, and the parts that they didn't use were thrown out. So they did not have the original cut. But what they did have, because Roddenberry had his own personal black and white work print, so they took the color footage from the menagerie and his work print to piece together the original episode. But then a year later, they found a full color version of that episode. It was mislabeled in the Paramount vaults. So it finally got its first TV airing in October of 1988, presented by Patrick Stewart. Was showed along with clips of the TV series and the movies, and a sneak preview of the upcoming Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. And I do remember that. I saw The Cage for the first time on that videotape, the black and white and color one, and I remember that airing because it aired it aired right at the beginning of season 2, because season 2 was delayed because of the writer's strike. They aired this, and so I remember that.
The only other thing I want to add is the fact that DeForest Kelley had seen this episode, and he told Gene Roddenberry, well, I don't know what the hell it's all about, but it's either going to be the biggest hit or the biggest miss God ever made.
Yeah. And we should all, because we haven't mentioned it yet, we all need to give a lot of credit to the unmentioned executive producer, and that's Lucille Ball. She brought up the money. I keep mentioning Desilu. We're really talking about her. Yep. She brought up the money. She had a lot of faith in Gene Roddenberry. So we thank her, and we thank everybody at Desilu for bringing this to us.
Absolutely. We wouldn't have Star Trek if it wasn't because of her. Right. So, absolutely. Thanks, Lucille. All right, listeners, thank you so much. What are your thoughts on the original series and this unaired pilot, The Cage, we just covered? Did the executives back then get it right? What are you doing to celebrate the 60th anniversary? Let us know. Check out www.thefilmbypodcast.com for film and TV articles and our entire library streaming free. Write to us at afilmbypodcast@gmail.com with your questions, comments, and concerns. We may just read your response on the show and send you some A Film By swag. Guys, thank you so much for joining me for The Cage. Looking forward to going through the original series with you both. It's going to be quite a ride.
Yep, likewise.
Yeah, I am too. It's going to be fun revisiting these.
It really is. Yeah, it was fun revisiting The Cage, I tell you. It was good. And good to be talking about it. All right, all you listening to the show, following us on social media, and subscribing to our Patreon, we thank you. See you next time for another episode of Phasers Set to Stun.